Now, if you're completely honest with yourself for more than 5 minutes, you'd probably have to admit that Disney is quite possibly one of the most evil production companies to ever exist. After all, this is the same company who bought out the entirety of Marvel, which obviously hasn't helped out things such as the Avengers franchise. And they're going to be restarting the Star Wars franchise and giving it to the guy who rebooted the Star Trek franchise, which was, that's obviously going to be a bad decision after as good as he did with the Star Trek franchise. If you couldn't tell the sarcasm I was giving there, then you're quite ignorant yourself. But you do have to say that they have had a couple of issues in the past with coming off and rubbing people the wrong way, such as when it comes to racism. Now, I'm not talking about a certain movie known as Song of the South, which was considered widely racist, and that is the main reason you will never see it come from the Disney Vault or never see it released on DVD or Blu-ray. What I'm talking about is quite possibly the most racist movie that Disney has ever created throughout the entirety of their history. And this could be nothing short of The Jungle Book itself. After all, look at this movie. It's nothing but dripping with racism, isn't it? Well, at least it would be if you were Amanda Bell for the Yahoo Movies section. Amanda Bell released an article a couple of days ago talking about how they could clean up the image of Jungle Book during the remake. Yes, apparently they are going to be remaking the Jungle Book because that's a wise decision. Going back and remaking yet another movie because Hollywood hasn't been strapped of good ideas over the past 10 years already as it was. But she states the main reason for the racism and the main reason why racism is personified in this movie is the following song segment.
Now I'm the king of the swingers, oh, the jungle VIP. I've reached the top and had to stop, and that's what's bothering me. I wanna be a man cub, and stroll right into town.
Now, if you're like me, you obviously could tell where the racism was just dripping from the song I Want to Be Like You by King Louie. If you couldn't tell, King Louie is personifying the black man, and Mowgli is personifying the white man, and it's nothing more than a song about how much the black man wants to be like the white man because of the white privilege they have. Now, if you're Tumblr idiots, like many of people out there, then you would agree with what I just said, but if you are halfway competent, you would understand that that is complete and total bullshit. There is no racism within this. But I want to pull a couple of statements from the article itself just so I can show you how they have their backing. And a link to this article will be in the description of the video. And I quote, "The cartoon's King Louie, which did not stem from the pages of Kipling's original, was a jazzy ape whose language skills were considered much less refined than those of the film's other animals, and who sang, 'I want to be like you' to the orphan human boy Mowgli. The character is widely panned as exemplifying negative racial stereotyping and connoting inequality between African Americans and Caucasians." Later, Amanda states that the King Louie character can have his speaking mannerisms updated in a way that suggests he speaks in a manner similar to the other characters. Jeffrey M. McCall, professor of communication at DePaul University, tells Yahoo Movies, "I don't think the upcoming film needs a total scrubbing, or at some point it would no longer be loyal to the original story. But it can be updated with a keener eye to avoiding stereotypical language or behaviors that could be translated to ethnic definition." Then later on, giving a little bit of explanation behind the character of Louie himself, while filmmakers initially tried to sidestep perceptions of racism with King Louie by casting an Italian-American singer, Louis Prima, in the role rather than Louis Armstrong, whom the part was originally written for, the character still strongly violated the ethos of social progress. King Louie was going to be a problem either way, opines Thompson. The original choice would have been offensive. Louis Armstrong animated as an ape. The choice they went with had a minstrel show feel to it, also offensive. Now, looking at those statements, you can't help but agree with Amanda and Mr. Thompson, can you? Or Jeffrey M. McCall, the professor of communications at DePaul University. You can't help but agree with every last one of you, can you? You can't help but do so. Because the way that King Louie talked just drips and personifies black people from the 60s. Or it could be that King Louie's mannerisms and the way he spoke drips and personifies the style of a hip cat from the 60s. The folks who were known for doing jazz, swing, and scat music. They were the hip cats. They were what hipsters were before they were hipsters, and before hipster was a demeaning term, and before hipster was an insult. This was the way that they talked, calling each other cuz, talking in the way King Louis does. This was not personification of the black folks of America or the African American community of the 60s. That's not the way it is personified. That's not the way they talked at the time. To come out and say in an article such as this that this images what black people talked like in the 60s is very racist in and of itself, because you, by making these statements, are saying that this is how all black people acted. And that is very racist if you ask me. And another huge item about the song, I Want to Be Like You itself, and how this can't obviously be tied back to racism, unlike you freaking idiots are trying to claim it is. I Want to Be Like You was an ape singing to a kid from India. So unless you're going to go off and say that Mowgli is the whitest of all whitest kids to ever be born in India, and to be an actual person from India, to be an Indian, then you're completely off base here. Mowgli's not white, so how is he supposed to personify the image of the white man? And here's another wonderful thing. King Louis was an orangutan. He wasn't a bonobo. He wasn't a gorilla. He was an orangutan. He was that type of ape. And do you know where orangutans originate from? It's not from Africa. They do not live in the Africa environment. So how is an orangutan supposed to personify the African American when they're not even from Africa? How does this even work for you people? This makes absolutely no bloody sense at all. And do you not find it just a little bit racist yourself to come off and say that an ape is personifying black people? Have you never heard of the phrase porch monkey? I want to make notice of one very important line that Amanda put in her article that is nothing more than pandering and kowtowing to the majority and trying to get more people onto her side. And it is this line: the character, when speaking about King Louis, is widely panned as exemplifying negative racial stereotyping and connoting inequality between African Americans and Caucasians. Take note of that. This is the first time I personally have ever heard anyone say that the Jungle Book is racist, or that King Louis is an image of the African American community of the 60s. I have never heard this before in my life. I'm a pretty well-versed man when it comes to this kind of thing, I will admit. Do I know everything? Have I heard everything? No, but I have never once in my life, amongst my circle of friends or the groups I run around with online or I talk to online and the movie people I talk to, have I ever heard that King Louis is racist. I would love to see some evidence of King Louis being personified or being taken as exemplifying negative racial stereotyping. This line is nothing more than Amanda Bell kowtowing to the majority, saying, look guys, you need to get with us because everyone else already believes this and everyone else already agrees with us. Now, as for the point about Louis Armstrong voicing King Louis, there was another reason than Disney going, oh, well, you guys, do you realize that we're about to make a black man be the voice of an ape? That's a little racist. That wasn't the reason for them getting rid of him. That is another area kowtowing and just taking it with absolutely no context or no evidence. I would love for you to have put that into the article. If that would have been put into the article, actual evidence for them saying that this was the reason they didn't use Louis Armstrong for the character of King Louis, then maybe I would have accepted it, but there was no evidence given. It was just word of mouth. Take this as a better form of evidence and a better explanation as for why they didn't use Louis Armstrong. Listen to Louis Armstrong's musical stylings.
Hold me close and hold me fast. The magic spell you cast. This is La Vie en Rose.
He was not a scat man. He was not a man who did music of this type. Yes, he was a jazz singer, but listen to him. His voice, his style of music would not have fit to King Louis. His voice would not have fit to the style of song that they wanted I Want to Be Like You ended up being. Every point that this idiot Amanda Bell brings up in this article is completely moot and asinine. There's no evidence to back her claims that King Louie is the most fucking racist thing to ever exist in Disney history, and when they remake this, they need to make sure that they don't put that in there, because me as a special snowflake, I will be offended if you don't. And I don't want to see you offending other people. In all honesty, I think it's a stupid idea to remake the movie in the first place, but for anyone to come out and try to claim this as racist is just asinine and ignorant. Amanda Bell writing this article out the way that she did came off as extremely racist herself, but because she is claiming that an ape, a monkey, is personifying the African Americans, that she herself is labeling a monkey as an African American, something that back in the day was used as an insult against African Americans. It is really ignorant for someone to come off and try to be a social justice worker and a nice little special snowflake in this way that Amanda Bell is being in this article, and in essence, be exactly what she's bitching about. It's really sad, but this is not her only point that she raises against the Jungle Book. And I quote, "Meanwhile, another big point of action might be to redress the controversial Jungle Book plot of young Mowgli being told he could not live with Baloo the bear because different species should keep to themselves. Given the historical framework of the film's mid-60s release, smack dab in the middle of the US Civil Rights Movement, this was perceived as highly suggestive of pro-segregation principles. Perhaps Favreau and screenwriter Justin Marks could just conjure up another narrative direction altogether for plucking Mowgli away from the wild to avoid this particularly messy aspect." So apparently to Amanda Bell, this special snowflake, the speech that Baloo gets from Bagheera and then passes on to Mowgli himself, is saying that the white folks shouldn't marry the black folk. Amanda Bell, anyone who believes what this person is saying in this article, you're a goddamn idiot. I'm sorry, you are an idiot. There's no way that a bear telling a human that you wouldn't marry a panther, or a panther saying you wouldn't to Baloo the bear, Bagheera, you would not marry a panther, would you? That's not saying that a black man and a white man shouldn't marry. These are two completely different species. That entire segment wasn't about whites and blacks. That entire segment was Baloo trying to get through Mowgli's thick skull why he doesn't fit in the jungle. Because he was a human. Because he was a man and not a freaking animal, you nincompoops. You freaking idiots, you dumbasses. That's not how that worked. That was not the point of this segment. And if we continue down this kind of a route for overanalyzing Disney movies, where are we going to end it off? Are we going to go and remake Beauty and the Beast? Because it puts across the idea to young ladies that regardless of how much of an asshole your boyfriend or husband is, if you just spend enough time loving them, they will change to be the perfect prince you need them to be. Or how about for The Little Mermaid? For a woman to truly get what she desires out of her man, she never needs to talk. She should never talk, because that's the only way Ariel got her man, was by losing her voice. Or how about The Lion King? If we teach our children that everything that ever happens is their fault, and then we tell them to just completely ignore it, their lives will end up perfect and they'll be happy at the end of the day. Or we can go with things like Sleeping Beauty, teaching young men that forcing yourself upon sleeping women is the most romantic thing you could ever do. Or we can go with the idea of Snow White, teaching young girls that living in the house with 7 men and absolutely no chaperone in sight is a great idea, because gang rape and gang banging is fun as all hell, isn't it? So when do we pull the plug? When do we stop overanalyzing Disney movies and shit like this? When do we stop letting people like these special snowflakes, these social justice warriors trying to denote and tell us what we should think of movies and media and everything that we ever see in our lives and everything that ever touches us?